Alexander McQueen, a generational talent, is one of the best British fashion designers. And in his tragic passing, his artistry and boundary-pushing vision is something that is missing from the fashion world today. He was born Lee Alexander McQueen to a working-class family in London, and at an early age, he showed a passion for fashion. At the age of 16, he dropped out of school and decided to pursue a tailoring course at Newham College. He later then went on to intern for various Savile Row tailors. There, he learned the intricacies of making suits by hand and pattern cutting, both of which laid the foundation for his future design success. He moved to Angels and Bermans, which was a significant move because at the time they specialized in theatrical costume design. This exposed him to a new style of tailoring and a flair for dramatics, which obviously went on to inform his design and presentation style in the future. He took his tailoring skills and briefly went to work for Japanese designer Koji Yatsuno and also Italian designer Romeo Gili. He did all of this before the age of 21. Obviously showing a promising future, Lee Alexander McQueen was full of confidence. He walked into Central St. Martin's not to become a student, but to become a teacher. They did turn him down, saying he wasn't old enough and didn't have enough experience, but they were so impressed by his portfolio, they invited him to join the master's program. In 1992, he presented his infamous graduate collection, Jack the Ripper Stalks His Victims. And this was the beginning of something great. It was a strong first impression with masterfully crafted tailoring. It was controversial, it was provocative, it was sensational, and obviously it got the press and media attention it deserved. But most importantly, it caught the eye of Isabella Blow, who was a stylist and magazine editor, who later became a mentor and advocate. Following his graduation, he wasn't wholly sold on the idea of starting his own brand, and he wanted to land a job as a designer. He interviewed with Martin Margiela, who turned him down, not because he wasn't qualified, but on the basis that he was too talented, and he encouraged him to return to London to start his own brand. So that's exactly what he did. He received funding from the British Fashion Council to present his first on-schedule collection. The collection included the infamous and viral Bumpster trousers, which had a low-cut waist, bringing attention to the bottom of the spine and lengthening the torso. These were very popular in the 90s, but most importantly, what it showed is that McQueen had the ability to create something new and redefine fashion. He then debuted his first full runway collection, which was a very, very big turning point. Despite the exceptional construction and designs, it got media attention for all the wrong reasons. There were elements of the show that were for shock value, that were very provocative, and the messaging that he was trying to get across was obviously misunderstood. This is something that plagued McQueen throughout his career because there was a consistent tug between his theatrical, often provocative and political designs and how they were received. But in hindsight, all of this press was crucial into pushing Alexander McQueen into becoming a household name. He was smart enough to realize that the shock value on the runway would translate to headlines, and what that will do is attract investment. Because at the time, despite the quality of work, the orders were not coming in, and even the orders that were coming in, he was struggling to fulfill them because he didn't have the means to manufacture. Eventually, the method paid off. He started to become an international success. He got the funding he needed to support manufacturing. He introduced menswear. This is where he hired his intern Sarah Burton, as well as them being able to fulfill orders and being stocked at the likes of Liberty, Saks, and Bergdorf Goodman. One thing that's quite sad, but is very common for British brands, is despite all of this success on the international stage, he was still being snubbed locally. He was receiving millions of pounds in investment and funding from outside of the UK, but within was pretty much being neglected. The funding was good, but it wasn't enough. And in 1996, he caught the attention of LVMH execs. They tapped him up to replace John Galliano as the creative director at Givenchy. This was met with a lot of pushback, including pushback from the founding designer Hubert de Givenchy, who basically coined the appointment a total disaster. But obviously, LVMH owned the brand, so he had no say on who was to become creative director or the creative direction of his vision going forward. Alexander McQueen had a very tumultuous time at Givenchy for this very reason. He felt restricted by the design codes. He didn't feel like he could really put his stamp or his flair onto the brand. He later went on to admit that he really did just take the job for the money, with the view to use the money to pump it into his own business and push that further. And that he did. The collections that followed him being appointed at Givenchy were spectacular. Some of the most iconic designs and moments came out of this time. I believe Bernard Arnault and co. probably saw exactly what he was doing. He was devoting more time to his own brand than to Givenchy. The designs were not doing very well and not translating to the core Givenchy customer. Bernard and Alexander McQueen had a very tenuous relationship, and the rumors about this began to spread. They spread all the way into the ears of Bernard Arnault's rival, the Gucci Group, now Kering. They heard about how badly Alexander McQueen was being treated. They knew he needed investment, he needed significant significant backing and they offered to purchase a 51% stake in the business. Funnily enough, during his time at Givenchy, LVMH consistently gave offers to purchase Alexander McQueen, but they didn't want to do this as a partnership. They wanted to purchase the brand outright. And this is not something that Alexander McQueen wanted to do. He turned down the offers because he did not believe that LVMH would honor the legacy of the brand. And funnily enough, his appointment at Givenchy is a direct example of that. Anyway, once the news was out that the Gucci Group was buying Alexander McQueen, it was not long after that his time at Givenchy ended. With this new deal, he then moved his presentations from London to Paris. The business operations became bigger, more sophisticated, introducing accessories, perfumes, a new diffusion line called MCQ, and of course, global retail stores. Alexander McQueen was at the peak of his success, but Lee McQueen was in a very low place. Someone who seemed like a rock star designer that had it all was battling depression and substance abuse. The pressures of the fashion industry was just too much for him. Juggling the pressures of wanting to be a true creative in a capitalist industry that really only cares about profitability. All these pressures culminated to him taking his life in 2020 at the age of 40. Shortly before his death, he began working on his autumn-winter collection, Angels and Demons, which was poignantly heavily centered on the afterlife. It was completed and presented by the design team after his passing. Sarah Burton, who joined Alexander McQueen as an intern, working her way up to become the head of women's wear, stepped up into the role as creative director. And she served in that position up until 2023 and was replaced by Sean McGuire. Sarah did a great job of honoring his work and protecting his legacy. And I believe Sean McGuire is doing the same, offering a seamless transition, presenting commercial collections rooted in Alexander McQueen's artistry. Alexander McQueen will be a historical fashion reference point for really great reasons and for really bad reasons. I feel like he's memorialized as both the good and the bad sides of the fashion industry.